China has had to slaughter millions of pigs as it desperately tries to control the deadly African Swine Fever. Welcome into this Thursday edition of Plain English, the best podcast for learning English through current events. I'm Jeff, the producer is JR, and you are listening to episode 163. That means you can find the transcript of today's program at plainenglish.com/163. It is an honor to have you with us each and every Monday and Thursday. It really is. Coming up on today's program, a virus is sweeping through China's pig population, and it threatens the country's massive pork industry. Spain once faced this exact same virus. It took them 35 years to eradicate it. Not good news. In the second part of the episode today, we'll talk about the English phrasal verb spell out. And it's Thursday, so we have a song of the week selected by JR, the producer. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you of our new partner, IELTS Advantage. They are the authority on the IELTS test, and they are offering Plain English listeners a free IELTS prep course called IELTS Fundamentals. You can access that course by going to plainenglish.com/IELTS. China and other Asian countries are suffering from a devastating outbreak of African Swine Fever, a deadly disease that affects pigs. China is a pork-loving nation that is home to about 440 million pigs, about half the entire world's population. Millions of pigs have been slaughtered in an attempt to control the spread of the virus, but it hasn't been enough. The disease is now in Mongolia, Vietnam, and North Korea, and may have already spread to other neighboring countries. There is no vaccine for this disease, and there is no way to treat an infected pig. Almost all infected animals die of the disease. The African swine fever does not affect humans. It has a scary name, but it doesn't affect humans, even if humans eat meat from an infected animal. So it's not a human health concern. But the pork industry in China is likely to take a hit. China is expected to raise 20% fewer hogs this year than last. This epidemic is already vastly larger than the avian flu epidemic that struck poultry in the 1990s and the outbreak of foot and mouth disease in Britain in 2001. ASF, as the virus is known for short, has several properties that cause it to spread quickly. First, an individual hog doesn't show symptoms of ASF until it has been infected for between 5 and 15 days. But during that entire time, the animal is contagious, meaning it can spread the disease to others. Another deadly property of ASF is the fact that it's so easy to spread from one animal to another. I don't think I need to spell out all the ways in which a virus can spread in a pig farm. I'll let you use your imagination. The virus is also hardy. That means it can survive in harsh conditions. It can live in dirt, on truck tires, and spread that way. In fact, one study showed that about half of all new infections come from vehicles or from workers' clothing or equipment. The virus doesn't only affect domesticated pigs either. Wild boars are pigs, but in the wild. Pretty much the same animal, just not part of a farm, in other words. And when the wild pig population gets infected, they spread it from farm to farm. This was news to me, but wild pigs have a fair amount of contact with farmed pigs, so this is bad news. You can imagine if this were just a virus that were contained to farm animals, you could stop the spread of the virus more easily by encouraging farmers to work together. But with wild boar acting as carrier pigeons for the disease, it can spread quickly from farm to farm before anyone knows what happens. And not only that, but ticks, little bugs, ticks, can carry and spread the disease too. So far, we've just talked about the scientific reasons why ASF spreads so quickly, but there is a human component too. And you might not be surprised to learn that it has to do with money. When a herd is infected with this virus, there is only one thing to do: cull the herd. And that means, crudely, to kill the animals. It's not fun to think about, but it is just a fact of life and a fact of modern farming. The hogs, though, are the farmer's business, so no farmer wants to cull his entire herd and get no money. So a responsible government will pay farmers to cull their herds. They will essentially buy the pigs that are being killed. And that is the only way to make sure that farmers actually do the responsible thing to stop the spread of the disease. This is a pretty standard procedure. Now, the problem is if the government doesn't pay enough for each culled hog. And that is what people suspect is going on in China and other countries in Asia right now. So what would happen if a farmer knew he wouldn't get enough money for culling his herd? Well, let's think about it. Pretend a farmer notices a single pig showing symptoms of ASF. The farmer is afraid that the virus is going to spread to his entire herd. In fact, it probably is already spreading. That farmer could hide the one sick hog and sell the entire rest of the herd to another larger farm all at once. If the hogs are still not showing symptoms, even if they're infected, then the other farmer, the buyer, would be none the wiser. The infected hogs would be integrated into a much larger farm, and the virus would spread farther and farther. So that's why it's very important for the government to pay farmers the full value for culled hogs. Otherwise, the farmers would sell infected hogs and it would spread and spread and spread. Now, officially, the Chinese government is paying for culled hogs, but some reports say that local governments are withholding payment. In other cases, farmers have been punished for having an outbreak in their farm. That just encourages people to hide it, and it doesn't help solve the problem. ASF was once confined just to Africa. That's how it gets its name, African Swine Fever. But in the late 1950s, it moved to Portugal from Angola and slowly spread across Europe, starting in Spain in 1960 and then spreading gradually eastward. It took Spain 35 years to completely eradicate ASF. And in the process, the pig farming industry in Europe matured and industrialized. No longer were most pigs raised by small farmers. New, larger, industrialized farms implemented new testing procedures, lab techniques, and sanitary procedures. The virus is still in the island of Sardinia in Italy. They've been trying for 40 years to eradicate it there. Scientists have been working on a vaccine for half a century without much luck. The only promising effort at a vaccine caused grotesque side effects that were almost as bad as the disease itself. Quick hi to a few listeners. Angelo in Milan has a British boss at a company owned by an American, so he's using English all the time. He started way back at the beginning, episode 1, and has already reached episode 100. So he'll probably hear this sometime in the fall. Good to have you with us, Angelo. Also, Heidi from Germany was listening to this program at the beach on the shores of the Red Sea in Egypt on her recent vacation, and I think that's amazing. Thanks for being with us, Heidi. Hey, if you're studying for the IELTS exam, I hope you heard my message last week. If not, here's a quick summary. We have a new partner at Plain English, and that's a company called IELTS Advantage, based in Ireland. It's led by a very experienced English teacher and IELTS expert, Chris Pell, who has put lots and lots of informative videos on YouTube, and he coaches students on the IELTS exam. That's his whole business, is the IELTS exam. And he has a free course online, which you can get at plainenglish.com/IELTS, IELTS. This tells you all about the test, how to approach it, what skills you need, things like that. Don't go in cold. Don't go into this test thinking you can just use your English and get your band 7 or higher. I mean, maybe you can, but according to me, that's too risky. You need to prepare for this test, and Chris's IELTS Fundamentals course is the best way to get started. plainenglish.com/IELTS, IELTS. It's totally free, a 5-day course to get you started on your IELTS preparation. Today we have a phrasal verb and that is to spell something out. We all know what spelling is. So, for example, I can spell out the word pig, P-I-G, but that's not what I mean by to spell something out. To spell something out is to explain it very clearly and explicitly. Do you remember how you heard it earlier? I was talking about how the African swine fever was spreading from animal to animal in a pig farm. As I was preparing this episode, I read all about how this disease spreads in a pig farm. And I made the executive decision as the person in charge of the content of this podcast. I decided not to spell out the different ways this disease spreads. I decided not to explain it clearly and explicitly. You can thank me later. Now, I know we're all here to learn new words in English, but I personally am not here to teach you some of these words. So I elected not to spell it all out for you. In fact, I had to look a couple of words up in the dictionary, and let me tell you, it's gross. So if you're really interested in learning this stuff, you can find it all online, believe me, but I decided not to spell it all out for you. This is also a term you might use at work. Some people are comfortable with a little uncertainty at work. They don't need explicit step-by-step instructions. Others are the opposite. They want everything to be spelled out. If you're going to give a person like that a project, you'll want to be prepared to spell everything out to make sure that you explicitly say everything you want that person to do. Do you remember the episode we did about the parents who allegedly cheated to get their kids admitted to prestigious universities? Federal prosecutors spelled out the illegal things that they say parents did in order to get their kids admitted. The indictment spells the charges out. It explains them, it lists them, it details them clearly and explicitly. One more example. You may have seen the news that British Prime Minister Theresa May has resigned. When they originally held the Brexit vote, nobody spelled out exactly what it would mean to leave the EU. As a result, people voted for a concept but not a plan. Had they spelled out the exact trade-offs, the outcome of the vote might have been different. Instead, they sent their government to negotiate a deal with Brussels, but when Theresa May spelled out when Theresa May spelled out the details of her plan to the British Parliament, the plan was rejected 3 times in a row. Okay, time for our song of the week. I know a lot of people say they like to learn English through songs. I don't personally put too much stock in learning via songs. Maybe learning a couple of words, but song lyrics aren't exactly how we speak, right? But listening to songs in English and understanding the words is still a lot of fun, so that's why we suggest one song for you each week. And today's song of the week was nominated by Fabio. No location given. We could guess, but I wouldn't want to guess wrong. Fabio suggests Mysterious Ways by the Irish band U2. That song was included in the album called Achtung Baby, released in 1991. The song is speaking to a young man who seems entranced by women and love. She moves in mysterious ways is the main line in that song. And in fact, the working name of the album before it became Achtung Baby was Fear of Women. I think they made the right choice there to ditch the working title, but it gives you a hint about what they were thinking. Mysterious Ways by U2, nominated by Fabio from an undisclosed location. If you would like your favorite English song included in a future episode, please email your selection to jr@plainenglish.com. That's all for today's episode. Remember, we send out additional study resources by email, totally free. If you'd like to get those, just visit plainenglish.com/mail, M-A-I-L, and enter your details. We send one more vocabulary word, plus links to English articles about the main topic, and those come out twice a week. We have JR to thank for those emails, what with his new promotion. plainenglish.com/mail, M-A-I-L. We'll be back on Monday. If you like architecture, then Monday's episode will be one for you. See you then.